Hello and welcome everyone to today's quick review of the Acer Swift Go 14 in the SFG 14-72 configuration. Now, I was using this laptop primarily to check out the new Intel integrated graphic in the new Meteor Lake chips, but I just wanted to briefly give you people a review since it's a pretty good and affordable little laptop. Not sponsored at all, personal opinion by the way.
This is Hubwood.
Now, this €999/$899 version comes with the Intel Core Ultra 5 125H 16GB of solid DDR5 6400 MHz RAM and a decent 512GB PCIe Gen4 SSD with up to 4.8 GB per second in reading and 2.5 GB per second in writing. The Acer Swift Go 14 is also available with a faster Core Ultra 7 155H, 32GB of RAM and a 1TB SSD drive for around $150 to $250 more. PS, and you can't upgrade the RAM and there is only one M.2 slot. Well, as the naming already suggests, it's a smaller 14-inch laptop that weighs 1,342 grams, and the 100-watt USB-C charger adds another 358 grams for a total of 1.7 kilograms. It comes in a very sturdy full aluminum body and has the usual Acer Swift feel to it, but in a really good way. Like, they kind of perfect that in my opinion. There's basically no display or keyboard flags, and the hinges, they feel perfectly balanced really. While opening the Swift 14 Go with one hand works like a dream, as you can see here, while it might be a bit tricky to grab the upper display half since there is no opening for your fingers over here. Now, the glossy 16x10 19Hz OLED display in this little guy is really awesome for the price category with 2880 by 1800 pixels. HDR 500 compatibility and zero backlight bleeding. I appreciate it being a 90Hz screen since you can already feel it's more fluid than 60Hz screens, and you can actually make use of that fact in some lighter games and esport titles as well. It also gets a near perfect color accuracy score and a really good maximum brightness of 522 nits. The small, white illuminated keyboard was working perfectly fine for me with a quite heavy key travel, and the very big touchpad felt really smooth, while the needed click force felt a bit too strong, not terrible though. It has a decent set of connections with two USB-C/Thunderbolt ports, where one of them is needed to charge it though, and two USB 3A ports, as well as an HDMI 2.1 port, a micro SD card reader and a 3.5mm audio jack, and the Wi-Fi module is a killer Wi-Fi 6E by the way. PS, this is what the integrated camera looks like and what the integrated microphone sounds like. The noise level of the two fans is pretty neat, especially at the two power levels, where it becomes almost unhearable when they run at the lower levels, and they can actually turn off completely after a while. But it's even bearable at maximum load, while the CPU can reach up to 100 degrees Celsius in a worst case scenario running Cinebench and a 3D Mark at the same time at a room temperature of 21 degrees Celsius, causing the CPU to thermal throttle. But that does not happen in normal scenarios and even AAA gaming though, where it hovers at around 75 degrees Celsius. Oh, and you can switch between the fan performance modes via pressing Fn+F. And Acer once more forgot to mention that for whatever reason. I tested the battery runtime of the 65 Wh battery at 20% display brightness on idle, which resulted in a whopping 15.1 hours. Watching YouTube at 50% brightness and using headphones at 20% loudness resulted in around 7 hours. PS, the Acer software allows you to use a battery saving mode at 80%. A quick note on the speakers, they are average but okay, while the maximum loudness is definitely disappointing. Now, performance-wise, the new Core Ultra 5 with its 4 performance cores, 8 E-cores and 2 low-power cores can achieve up to 12,500 points in Cinebench R23 with 1,678 points for the single core when using the performance mode plugged in, and PC Mark X was getting me around 6,350 points in that same scenario. If you're interested in the gaming capability of this machine, please check out my extended gaming review of this laptop next, where I've tested over 32 games on this Acer Swift Go 14. I'll post a link in the description and the end card. Spoiler up front, it can game, but there are some issues with the newer Intel drivers. Again, at least in some games. But most eSport titles work fine, and even most AAA games are somewhat playable with this new chip. And for the 3D mark, I did get a good 3,147 points for the Time Spy and 7,191 points for the Firestrike benchmark. But before I'm presenting my conclusion, here are 3 of the over 32 games I've tested. I actually didn't expect Valorant to work that good, as this game often surprised me with bad performance in the past on several laptops, even with dedicated GPUs. But at 1080p and low settings, I saw a super high average FPS of 199 and 1% lows of 93 FPS in a random deathmatch, which is perfectly playable even for more sophisticated gamers, I guess. So if Valorant is your kind of game, you're perfectly fine with the new Intel Core Ultra 5 125H. For No Man's Sky, I was testing 1080p at low settings with FSR enabled in the performance mode, which turned out to be very playable even on planets with a lot of plants and grass and such. The game is hard to benchmark since planets are so different, and there are some longer stutters getting in and out of the plane or in and out of the atmosphere. But I was getting around 75 to 85 FPS on average on the planets and even more in space. The frame time graph was looking kind of weird, as if it was constantly stuttering, which I didn't notice when recording the benchmark, so in my opinion, the game seems to be playable really well. I was curious about how stuttery Hogwarts Legacy would be. I saw an average of 42 FPS on low settings with FSR performance at 1080p, with pretty low 1% lows of around 16 FPS, which is not surprising since this game really isn't running well on weaker systems, but I would say it works. The game tends to stutter a lot if you enter a new area, but usually manages to calm down a bit after a while of playing. It was at least much better than on the Core Ultra 7 MSI 13-inch laptop I've tested the other week, which was heavily power limited. Now, I really think this is a pretty solid little 14-inch laptop, and I didn't experience any real flaws except for the speaker loudness and the fact that it's not upgradable very well, I guess. I actually did like the build quality and how it feels very much, in contrast to like Matthew Moniz, who also reviewed it, while he also had a slightly different model on his test bench. So make sure to check the specific model number. I really loved the screen and the battery runtimes, and you could easily use it for a whole day at a university or at work, I guess. Especially on low power activities, Intel really catched up with AMD with Meteor Lake and their new super efficient low power cores. And that's all for today. If you liked the video, don't forget to click that thumbs up button and consider subscribing for more laptop reviews and gaming benchmarks in the future. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye bye and tschüss.